It looks like it's gonna fall apart, but I promise it's not. Hey everyone, so today I am going to be heading out to Joann's because I need to finish some of the details on the front of Aloy's shirt, and I realized that the fabric that I got to do that is just not going to be enough. On the front of Aloy's shirt, and actually on the back, which I didn't realize until looking at the official guide from Gorilla, I think that I would notice that playing the game's over 60 hours or whatever. She's got this triangular type detail on the front and back of her shirt. So the middle of it is this brown suede, and then on the edges of it there is this red fabric, and it's covered with some stitching on top, but I'm going to be doing that a little bit different. The issue comes with the red fabric. So I bought I don't even know how much this is. This might be a quarter of a yard of fabric from Joann's years ago. Upon looking at it a little bit more closely, this fabric is just not going to work for what I need it. I need it to be a little bit more stiff so that I can actually iron it and make it into a nice crisp little strip that I sew onto the front of the top. But this is just one of those situations where I need to get a fabric that's a little bit stiffer and will hold up better to actually ironing it into the crisp shape that I want it to. I'm still gonna keep this, it's perfectly good fabric, and I may end up using it somewhere else on the costume. I'm not even sure if I showed you the finished shirt. This is the base of Aloy's shirt. And one other detail about this shirt that you may notice if you look up close, if you look on the side seam and pretty much every seam that's on this shirt, I decided to use a contrasting stitch on the inside because I think it looks cooler. I think it looks kind of pseudo hand sewn, and from far away it'll definitely have that look. You can totally sew this with the correct color of thread. I just thought it kind of gave it a little bit of a unique touch. It looks like it's gonna fall apart, but I promise it's not. This is just a very large zigzag stitch. I want to say I did a 5mm, I don't remember, but it's a large zigzag stitch, and that's what's making it that large and visible to the eye. There also is just a safety stitch in there as well so that it just doesn't pop a seam on me. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. It's kind of crazy to think that this is the first thing that I've made in almost maybe 4 or 5 months. I can't remember the last time I actually crafted something, let alone sewed something. I don't sew very often, and that's another reason that I decided to make this costume this year, because it's challenging me. It's making me do things that I haven't done in a while, and I'm pretty satisfied with it so far. And this shirt, from pattern to mock-up to that's not finished, but I think it's been about maybe 3-ish hours, which pretty damn good for me considering whenever I first started sewing things. I remember the very first thing that I sewed was a pair of gloves for my Tracer cosplay. I was using stretch fabric, did not know that you needed a stretch needle, did not know that you needed all these other things to work with stretch fabric. I was having a miserable time. There's a great photo that my husband took of me just screaming over the machine and not being able to get it to work. But what I'm trying to get at is it's amazing to me that I was able to make that shirt in a little less than 3 hours when sewing projects used to take up my entire weekend. It's one of those things I look back on it, 2017 me was struggling so hard to learn the sewing machine, and now this stuff almost, I wouldn't say that it comes naturally, but it definitely comes a lot easier than it did back then. I like to acknowledge those situations and just realize how far I've come, because this definitely would have taken me an entire weekend to sew back in the day. I guarantee if you look back on your old projects, you will find something that you have improved on, and I just think it's important to look back on your old stuff to see how far you've come. That's my little spiel about how I don't like to sew, but I'm doing it anyway because I want to get better at it. But that is the plan. I'm gonna go out and get some of that fabric. I'm in the mood to go out to Joann's and brave those crowds because I'm filming this a week before Christmas. I might be crazy for doing that. But that's what I'm gonna do, so let's head on out. You look like you're scheming something.
Hey. So, did you know that in 40K, the Emperor Mankind, his bestie, his name is Malkador.
Okay.
And he actually had his own private library. And in his library, he had things like the Rosetta Stone and the Mona Lisa.
Why? I ended up getting a half yard of crimson linen and some beads for Aloy's wig, and then I was just going back home to get in some detail work on this shirt. Using the original shirt pattern, I laid it on top of my shirt and cut out the middle detail, creating a negative pattern for me to trace out with chalk so that I can line all the details up later. I then took out the detail pattern piece and cut each individual part out, leaving me with this large piece for the tan suede in the middle and 2 red strips for both of the sides. I then laid out my tan suede in pattern and some pattern weights plates on top and traced everything with chalk and cut out that piece. I then pinned this piece to the front of the shirt and top stitch it on with a straight stitch. With that sewn on, I then moved on to the red detail pieces. Using the pattern that I cut out earlier, I traced around it with chalk and some pattern weights as before and cut that piece out with a good bit of seam allowance on either side of the fold underneath to create a strip. This is where I admit that I couldn't find my iron and I just kind of continued soldering on anyway. Sometimes when I can't find the tool, I just keep going and I don't care. So I continued on and I was folding the fabric underneath itself, securing it the whole way with these clips. If you do have an iron and you know where it is, this is where I would recommend that you go in and iron these strips down so that they are nice and crisp on the edges, and it just makes it a lot easier to sew if you do that. I made it work with just some clips and some just bullheaded ingenuity, I guess. Once the strip was sewn and top stitched, I then pinned it to the front of the shirt, making sure to cover up all the top stitching that I had on the tan suede piece. I then sewed the strip down with a straight stitch and repeated all steps on the other side with the other red piece. Now it's time to add in the stitching details on top of the red fabric, and for that, I'm just using some brown puff paint because I can't be bothered to learn how to do a satin stitch on my sewing machine yet. I just gotta take one thing at a time. I'm following my pattern to make sure that I'm doing the details in the right spot, and I'm also trying to cover as much of the top stitching as I can with this stuff. Once I finished, it just had to dry for about 72 hours, and I did it all again for the backside. And for the last detail on the shirt, it's time to take some suede lace and sew that all onto the edge of the sleeve. So whenever you're sewing with suede lace or these thicker types of thread, you need a special suede lace needle that you actually kind of like twist into the actual suede lace to get it hooked in there. You don't do the whole thread it through the eye of the needle or anything like that. And the other important thing is that you actually have to physically punch the holes for you to actually sew through. So I didn't have like an awl or anything on me, so I just ended up using scissors to kind of snip little holes, and that worked fairly well. However, I think later on in future vlogs, you'll see me using an actual, awl and a punch to do this. In order to sew this on, I'm just taking the suede lace and going in from the back side of the fabric and making sure to knot the other end of the suede lace that's actually underneath the fabric so that it doesn't just like come out and go flailing everywhere. And I'm just continually sewing along here. It's a tedious process, but it's actually not all that hard. And as I'm going through, I'm making sure that the suede lace is, laying fairly flat and not getting super twisted, which luckily this wasn't twisting on me all that much. And whenever I get to the end of the sleeve, I then knot that other end of the suede underneath the fabric, and I just snip away any of the excess that I have there. And then I take some leather glue and I go in and I just reinforce those knots with a little bit of leather glue just to give it a little bit more security so that it just doesn't, pop out and I don't have any more suede lace detail. That's no fun. I worked hard for this suede lace detail. I wanted to stay there. All right, so it is December 28th. I set a goal to get Aloy's undershirt done before the end of 2022, and I did it. I wish that I could put the shirt on for you guys, but I put that puff paint on the back and there's some like glue on the inside of the sleeves that still needs to dry, so can't really do that just yet, but it's done. I am so happy. It feels like it has been months since I have made something from scratch, especially sewing something. I haven't sewn something in I don't know how long. The last thing that I sewed was probably like I was just tailoring something that I had purchased. So this has been a lot of fun, and I put this together. I'll have to look through the footage, but I want to say that the shirt maybe only took me about 5 to 6 hours to put together, like considering like all of the details that are on it. That's pretty damn good for me and a sewing machine. I think that the next thing that I'm gonna do is probably work on the suede like vest thing that goes over top of that, and that's gonna be made out of suede. That's gonna be a lot of suede hand stitching as well, but I think I'm gonna give myself a couple of days just to chill and play some video games, because I ended up watching like let me see who it's by actually. The channel is called Lasers Z. I ended up watching 2 of his videos, one on Horizon Zero Dawn and one on Forbidden West. It was about 3 hours worth of stuff, but I watched mine on like 1.5 speed, so it ended up being a lot quicker. I watched both of those, and while I was working on this, it was really nice. I ended up finishing the Horizon Zero Dawn video at the exact time that I finished putting the puff paint on the back of this like shirt, but it was really exciting to just kind of like listen and hear someone talk about the games again, and now I just like really just want to go screw around in Forbidden West. I think that's what I'm gonna do. That's gonna be my reward for the end of the year, finishing this shirt. Anyways, I'm gonna sign off here, and I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope whatever you're working on is going well, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye!